Well, welcome to our last budget hearing today, Metro Arts, the Nashville Office of Arts and Culture. And I want to say Councilman Robert Swope just walked out, but he's been here for a little while, and we are joined by Council Lady Tanika Vercher, the chair of the Council's Budget and Finance Committee, as well as the Finance Director, Talia Lomax O'Neill, and the city's Chief Strategy Officer, Brian Kelsey. I will reiterate what I've been saying today as we've gone along, that the Finance Department has communicated, and I am here to reaffirm that this is essentially a status quo budget year. We've had big increases in the operating budget over the last couple of years, $120 million and $100 million in new revenue, which resulted in big increases in the operating budget. This year, we're not anticipating a number quite that large. It's compounded by a record number of appeals of reappraisals, which should result in some decreased property tax revenue. And then on top of that, we've got some overall revenue declines just generally from that we're anticipating. Having said that, we intend to maintain the record low tax rate, $3.15.5 in the urban service district. And at the same time, continue to provide the same level of service to the community that we've been providing in the prior years. So, having said all that, Ms. Cole, if you would introduce yourself and your staff, I would greatly appreciate it. The floor would then be yours, and then we'll ask you some questions at the end.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Jen Cole. I'm the Executive Director of Metro Arts. To my right is Clay Haynes, our board chair, and to my left is Ian Myers, our Finance and Operations Director. I'm cognizant that we're at the very end of a very long day, and appreciate the opportunity to talk to you a little bit and completely understand where we are at the financial situation for the city, and are perfectly happy to continue to do as much as we humanly can for public impact. I want to talk a little bit about what we have done with our budget increases, particularly over the last 2 years, and then address the sort of one increase that's for request. I always like going after our friends at Parks and Libraries, because one of the things that that I always like to articulate, particularly to the public, is that while we own parks and library facilities, we don't own the cultural facilities of a community, but they're just as important to our quality of life. And since 1978, our department has passed through almost all of its budget back into community priorities. And we do that particularly through several things, through grants and through direct hire of artists. And we have, particularly over the last 2 years, continued to double down on some of those things in our community to support the cultural infrastructure of this community that we all value so very much. I also want to say that we do that with 11 staff. We are a small but mighty department who are consistently regarded nationally and internationally as sort of a model, and we are real proud of that and want to continue to do that. The last 2 budget cycles, the council, thank you very much, and the administration have seen fit to increase our budget, and I wanted to just take a couple of moments and sort of talk about, at a high level, how we have prioritized citizen impact for those resources. We, as a department, prioritized sort of 3 things that we feel like are really core to our value system and core to the mission of our agency. One is to really support and grow the cultural organizations that are in this community. We have over 80 cultural nonprofits in the community. We just completed a study last year that indicated that collectively those organizations contribute $429 million in annual economic impact to the community. That includes $19 million in local sales tax revenue. So the 80 cultural nonprofits that we work with are an economic engine for this community and not just a quality of life engine. The last several years, we've increased our grants pool. Those cultural organizations are also growing, just like our overall population. We've actually seen about a 20% increase in cultural organizations serving our residents, and when they need more to do more, we like to invest in that. So last year we saw an overall 12% growth in our grants pool. What's particularly of note in that is that the largest percentage of growth was actually funding very small organizations with budgets of less than $100,000. So we tried to take the increase we got last year and put that at the very grassroots level, including a 37% increase to very tiny nonprofits. who are serving grassroots communities, and to new nonprofits that didn't exist 5 years ago, like the National Museum for African American Music and Oz Arts Nashville, all of which didn't exist 5 years ago. And so from an investment in our cultural infrastructure standpoint, we feel it's really important to continue to grow those organizations that are serving our residents. Just like our library branches grow and provide wider programming, small organizations like the Chinese Arts Alliance or youth involved in arts and humanities are serving summer camps, after-school programs, et cetera. The second priority that we put forward is increasing access for all residents to arts and culture in their life. We do not believe that economy, transit access, et cetera, should be a barrier to you participating in arts and culture. And to that end, we have really doubled down on data collection to figure out how we're doing that. So for example, I can say with confidence that last year, 99% of Metro school kids had access to arts and culture programs because of our funding them, either through field trips, et cetera. There's only one school last fiscal year, and we're working to amend that this fiscal year, that did not have access to sort of after-school programs or arts and culture field trips due to the investment of our resources in those places. We activated another 200 faith-based institutions, houses of worship, senior centers, memory care facilities, parks and libraries with arts-based programming. And so we believe very strongly that nothing, your zip code or your income, should not be a barrier to you participating in the arts and culture where you live that are culturally appropriate. The other thing that I'm very proud about, and this goes to our request, is a pilot program that we began 2 years ago through a PIP, working with Judge Calloway and the Oasis Center to increase arts access for court-involved youth. We'll talk about that. But basically, 2 years ago, we initiated a pilot with Judge Calloway and the Oasis Center to figure out how arts could be part of restorative practice for young people who enter the juvenile system. Those young people can come in for all different kinds of reasons, and their families are involved. We decided to train artists to work at that intersection, so we co-developed a training with Vanderbilt Oasis Center and the Juvenile Court, training artists on adverse childhood experiences, positive youth development, and positive restorative practice. It's now seen as a national model that's being looked at by cities all around the country. Opportunity Now is now using that training this year on sort of how we actually train community-based people to work with communities, particularly with court-involved youth. We are very proud that over 300 young people have been part of this program. Over 49 artists have been trained to sort of do this, and on any given day, there are arts interventions happening in gang court, drug court, community-based referral, and in detention. I can tell you a story a little bit later about why we think this is so important. And then the last impact area that we really try to push forward and measure is on wages. About 7% of people in this community earn their living in the creative arts in some way, shape, or form, which means that they're not working for a big company. They're often self-employed. It is really, really important that we double down on wage equity and that we really work to pay artists. In the increases that the council and the mayor's office approved last year, we really, really focused on wages, particularly with artists of color. Last year, we contracted with more than 203 individual artists. 59% of the artists that we work with were artists of color, doing 74 discrete different types of programming in neighborhoods. We believe it is really important to pay people where they are and to do the thing that they're great at, whether that's storytelling or music or poetry or visual art, and through a variety of programs, our Thrive program, our Learning Lab artist training program, our temporary public art programming, or our grants programming, making sure we're paying attention to how we're paying artists is really important. The last thing I will say is that this is a small but mighty department that tries to be integral with other organizations and the city's priorities. So we have really doubled down on listening to what the city has seen as important in terms of youth violence. You've just heard me talk about that as being a huge priority of everything that we do. Our transit programming, we now have 2 open calls for artists to do transit-based interventions and an open call to do something at the Music City Central, really heavily involved in how artists are part of placemaking and transit programming. And making sure, because artists are heavily affected by our lack of mobility in this community, making sure artists are part of the solution for a more robust transit system. I want to start to talk about public art when I talk about wages, too, because in the last few years, we have grown the public art program in the city more than 4 1,000%, including 55% of the commissions that we have given to Tennessee artists, which is the highest percentage of local hire of any public art program in the United States. Like, we care about paying people who live here, and we care about paying them good wages while they make the quality of life of our community better. Those are just a couple of highlights about what we believe and what we believe the public benefit is of the increases that we have received. I spoke specifically about our one request for an improvement, which is actually to take something that has been a public investment plan in a special purposes account and add it to our current operating baseline. It's not asking for an increase of that, but simply adding and moving that program with Judge Calloway into our operating baseline. 100% of that money goes for training or for artist salaries. So that is not, none of that resource represents any admin oversight. But that is all going back to those things I talked about, which is access and wage. And so I will see if my friends have anything else they would like to say.
Can I interrupt you in a second?
Absolutely.
Just because we're using the terminology, can you just explain what restorative justice is to people who may not be familiar with it?
So I think there's a really, the way to look at it is to sort of say families and children enter into they become court involved for a variety of reasons. Restorative justice is an opportunity to interrupt those practices, figure out who was harmed, including the child themselves, their family, their community, and ask what could we do to make a repair. And so I want to be very clear that we're not just providing arts and crafts programs for, quote, kids who have gotten in trouble, but the artists are trained to think about how art, how theater, how music can help a young person stop, think about harm, and make a repair. If I might give an example, we have a young man who was in detention who experienced one of our spoken word and drumming programs. When he left detention, he sought out that arts program at the Bass Adult Community Center, enrolled himself while he's getting his GED. The next day, he brought 5 of his friends, who are also court-involved youth, and the next day he brought his mother. And they're all now involved in this base program, and the articulation, and Judge Calloway could tell you many, many more stories of young people who are both in community-based diversion, but also in who are seeking this out, is that often the arts intervention and the work with the artists who are trained can help young people kind of think about their life experience and also think about how they're capable of contributing in a different way. And so we've had lots and lots and lots of families kind of really think about this repair and sort of their worth in contributing back to their community. I like to think of it as a two-way street, really about all of a sudden the sense that creativity can help me think about my life in a different way and also help me think about my value as a human being in a different way. So it is really way more than we're just going to do drumming, but really the process of artists working with young people.
I guess I want to add a testimonial on why I think this program needs to remain intact. I actually went down to the detention center and watched one of the, I don't know if it was called a graduation ceremony or whatever at the end of the year, and there were different types of artwork, everything from spoken word to pieces of art, and they were quite proud of themselves. Their family members came for them to make presentations. There was actually a young man that had previously gone through the program but had left the detention center that came back because he wanted to talk about his experience and to present his art in that session. So, I mean, it was really an impressive presentation from those guys, and it meant, I mean, it's working. You could tell it really meant something to their lives.
Thank you. And I would say that of the 48 artists that we've trained, 4 of them experienced incarceration as young people. And so we really are sort of making sure we are having artists work in communities that have some cultural competency. The other thing, and it's just a money thing. I said this when I pitched the PIP, and I'll say it again. Mm-hmm. It costs about $88,000 to incarcerate one young person for a year. And this money is helping us reach more than 300 young people and all those artists. And so, yeah, we would just on money alone would make that argument. But I think clearly, as you've seen, the impacts are far deeper.
Yes, I agree.
Anything else, sir?
Yeah, just because I can't help myself. So you guys went through a strategic planning process, much like many other metro agencies and departments the last year, and then going into a somewhat different budget environment this year. how are you feeling about talking to people about implementation, and are there things you can point to that make people feel like all the participation they had in that planning process was worthwhile and is going to bear fruit? Is there any kind of early, maybe smaller wins that can be pointed to this year?
Sure. I'll talk about two. One is to sort of you had talked about plan to play earlier. So one of the things we pride ourselves on is working with other departments and their plans. So for example, the Southeast Regional Park, which Tim Nage has spoken about in the last hearing, we've actually awarded an artist who will go in and do a permanent piece of public art in that park, but will also mentor a local artist and sort of how to work on a public design team. So one of our things is to be valuable. One of our priorities of our strategic plan is to be valuable to other departments and their plans. So that's just a low-hanging, how are we working to implement other departments and their plans, particularly through public art. But from a very macro level, one of the priorities of our plan was to train local artists to be public artists and placemakers. Our Learning Lab program, which was initially funded by the National Endowment in its first year, is in its second year. The resources that we had from an increase will go into that, and that is training 12 local artists to work at the intersections of social justice in the community. So we have artists working with transit, with public health, on neonatal rates, on et cetera. So we're not just working on plopping and dropping art. We're trying to actually train citizen artists to be parts of their communities and to sort of make living activities that happen in their neighborhoods.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
My final question,
Yes.
just because I know you put a whole lot of work into this, Jan. I would like for you just to speak really quickly on this public art maintenance.
Yes. I'm happy to.
We're talking to lots of people. I think you need to spend a couple minutes just trying to talk about where you're trying to go with that.
Sure, yeah. So one of the things that any city does is it has assets. Our community has been, has existed for a long time. We, last summer, with our capital improvement budget, were able to do an assessment of all the art that the city owns, not just the art our department owns. We own about 50 pieces of art. But as far back as 1900, the city began accepting artworks that live in the Parks Department, the General Services Department, the Schools Department, and we really had no consolidated sense of what those things were and their condition. So our department took the lead and did that analysis. We now have a centralized database that holds that information, and we did a priority of rough estimates and priority of most in dire need of help, and it's fine. That's the continuum. We have, thanks to Talia and some of the other departments, made a commitment in our CIB this year. We will put forward money to hire a conservator, so that Metro doesn't have a conservator on contract, to validate and actually give us hard estimates on what repairing the top 10 pieces would be. And we are working on some interdepartmental policy improvements, which I would hope to bring forward to council by fall, that would really help us begin to clean up how things come into our possession, and when they are in our possession, how they get maintained over time. So I think it's fair to say that for many years we just accepted lots of artwork. There was not necessarily a department whose job it was to figure that out. We now have one of those, and we could stand to do some policy cleanups on monuments, memorials, collections management, et cetera, so that as a government we have a clearer pathway of asset management and a clear sense of when is it time to sort of let something go that doesn't need to be on our property anymore.
I love the example you gave of identifying a specific piece of artwork that was in a Metro school.
Yes.
And how they didn't realize how significant that piece of artwork was, and when you let them know through this process, they got right on it.
Yes, Jerry Baxter. That piece was done in 1907 by Belle Kinney, one of our most famous female sculptors, and it was a wonderful piece that was jointly fundraised by the African American community and the white community that came together. At one point, that statue stood on the intersection of Broadway and West End. It was that prominent of a piece of art, but over time it just got moved and moved and moved and moved, and now it sits in Jerry Baxter Middle School, but I don't believe the school knew that it was a Belle Kinney. It's been very degraded, and Mr. Baxter needs some help. He needs some repairs, and the school system, I think, is working on that. But it was a classic example of sometimes we don't know what we know. We don't know what we have as a resource, and at least now that we have everything in a database, all the departments have access to that information, and the historical historical record of how something came into being and how important it is. Some of these things are very historically important to our city, including the murals here at the courthouse and the windows. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I'm sure everybody has read that we're in the top 20 for Amazon relocation, right? Plenty of our competitor cities who did not make the list have comparable weather, comparable taxes, comparable workforces, comparable locations. I think it's fair for us to assume that one of the reasons we made the top 20 is because we have demonstrated we are committed to having a high-quality place of living to live, and a high value of arts and culture, higher than lots of our competing cities. So I think everybody should understand that, and I'm committed personally to seeing that commitment grow over time, even though this year's budget might not be the moment for that to happen. So I appreciate your work. I appreciate your volunteering to help our city go in the right direction, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sure.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.